Good evening, football fans, and Happy New Year. Big Al here on this Wednesday, January 1st, 2025, and welcome to the Week 17 edition of the week that was, as we'll be taking a look at all the team and player statistical numbers from Week 17 of the 2024 NFL season. At the end of the recap, we'll run down my latest power rankings for Week 18, plus the current NFL playoff picture, and the clinching and elimination scenarios coming up here in week number 18. This info is courtesy of the Sports Alerts app, ESPN.com, and NFLPlayoffScenarios.com. So before we begin, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. And I'm sorry I was late on this video. I was a little bit tired yesterday, so I did not record, so I'm getting it out the way now. Alright, we'll be looking at a bunch of games this week. Of the 16, we'll be looking at the Christmas Day doubleheader with the Chiefs and Steelers and the Ravens and Texans. Then you have the Saturday tripleheader with the Chargers at the Patriots, the Broncos at the Bengals, and the Cardinals at the Rams. Plus, the 3 primetime games, the Seahawks and Bears in the Thursday night finale. Then we'll have Sunday night football with the Falcons and Commanders. And Monday night football, the season finale with the Lions and 49ers. And of some of the Sunday afternoon games, we'll be looking at the Packers and the Vikings, which is our game of the week, as well as the Jets and Bills and the Cowboys and Eagles. So stick around for all of that. And now, I present to you the Week 17 edition of the week that was. And we'll begin on Christmas Day with Game 1 of the Christmas doubleheader as the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-10. The Chiefs become just the 5th team since the merger to win 15 games in a season, as they are now 15-1. And the Steelers have now dropped 3 in a row. They fall to 10-6. And let's start off with individual numbers first for the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes went 29-38 for 320 yards with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 127.1 passer rating. And he ran the ball just once for 12 yards. Not much to speak of for this ground attack by Kansas City, as Kareem Hunt was held to 9 carries, 20 yards. He did score a touchdown. And Isaiah Pacheco was held to 6 carries for 18 yards. On the receiving end, Travis Kelce led the way with 8 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets. Xavier Worthy, 8 for 79 on 9 targets. And Justin Watson had 2 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Hollywood Brown had 4 catches, 46 yards on 7 targets. Harrison Butker was 1 for 1 on field goals. His long attempt was 32, and 2 for 3 on extra points. Matt Ariza, 5 punts, averaging 53.8, long punt of 72, 2 touchbacks, and 2 punts inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Chiefs include Chris Roland Wallace with 10 total tackles. Drew Tranquil with 9 total tackles. Justin Reed, 5 solo tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Trent McDuffie, 4 solo tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Nick Bolton, 8 tackles, and 2 passes defense. Mike Dana, 5 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Felix Enudke Uzoma, he had 3 solo tackles and a sack. And Jaden Hicks had 4 total tackles and a pass defense for the Chiefs. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, Russell Wilson was 23 of 37 for 205 yards with no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 65.7 QB rating. Najee Harris led the ground attack for Pittsburgh, 13 carries, 74 yards. Jaylen Warren, 11 carries, 71 yards. And Russell Wilson with 6 carries, 55 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Your leading receivers are Pat Freiermuth, 7 catches, 60 yards on 8 targets. George Pickens, 3 for 50 yards on 7 targets. Jaylen Warren, 5 catches, 41 yards on 6 targets. And Calvin Austin III with 4 catches, 31 yards on 5 targets. Chris Boswell was 1 for 1 on field goals, long attempt 36, 1 for 1 on extra points. Corliss Waitman, 4 punts averaging 44.5, long punt of 58. Your leading tacklers for the Steelers include Minkah Fitzpatrick, who had 7 total tackles. Patrick Queen also had 7 total tackles. Dante Johnson had 4 solo tackles. You had 4 tackles and a pass defense by Alex Highsmith. 4 tackles by Peyton Wilson. 3 solo tackles and a pass defense by both Corey Trice Jr. and Cameron Sutton. Alright, total yards 389 for the Chiefs and 364 for the Steelers. Passing yards favored Kansas City 320 to 162. Rush yards favored Pittsburgh 202 to 69. The Steelers had 23 first downs, the Chiefs had 20. The Chiefs finished 3 of 10 on 3rd down and 1 for 1 on 4th down. And for the Steelers, 8 of 16 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down. 9 penalties, 90 yards for the Chiefs, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 5 punts. 4 penalties, 25 yards for the Steelers, 5 sacks taken for 43, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 4 punts. Time of possession favored the Steelers, 31 minutes, 22 seconds, versus 28 minutes, 38 seconds for the Chiefs. Closing line was Kansas City minus 1.5, and the over-under was 46, and they just missed the total by a touchdown. I took the Chiefs to win and to cover, so I start the week 1-0 straight up and against the spread. The second game on Christmas Day was a blowout as well, as the Baltimore Ravens went down to Houston and destroyed the Texans 31-2. Baltimore inches closer to winning the AFC North title, as they now sit at 11-5, while the AFC South champion Texans fall to 9-7. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Ravens, starting with Lamar Jackson. 10 of 15, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 143.9 QB rating. Josh Johnson came in briefly, went 1 for 2 for 16 yards with no touchdowns or INTs, and a 77.1 quarterback rating. King Henry did his thing once again for Baltimore's ground game. Derrick Henry, 27 carries, 147 yards, and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson added 4 carries, 87 yards, and a rushing score. And Keaton Mitchell had, if I can get back there, here we go, 11 carries for 20 yards. As far as your leading receivers, you have Mark Andrews, 2 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. In fact, no Raven had more than 2 catches in this game. Zay Flowers had 2 grabs for 31 on 5 targets. Derrick Henry added 2 catches for 18. Isaiah Likely did catch a touchdown pass in this game for the Ravens. Justin Tucker 1 for 1 on field goals, long attempt 52, 4 for 4 on extra points. And Jordan Stout had 4 punts, averaging 41.3, long punt of 50, with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Your leading tacklers for the Ravens include Roquan Smith, who had 8 total tackles and a sack. Marlon Humphrey had 7 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Kyle Van Noy, 4 total tackles and a sack. Brandon Stevens, 3 solo tackles. And Nate Wiggins, 3 solo tackles and a pass defense. Other defensive players worth mentioning include Chris Board, who had a sack as well as 2 solo tackles, and Kyle Hamilton, who had 2 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. For the Texans, C.J. Stroud, 17 of 31, 185 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 59.2 QB rating, easily one of his worst games of 2024. Davis Mills completed a pass for 5 yards and an 87.5 QB rating. I don't know why that went in there, but okay. And not much with the Houston ground attack, led by Joe Mixon, 9 carries, 26 yards. And Dameon Pierce, 5 carries, 13 yards. As far as the receivers, you have Nico Collins with 3 catches, 59 yards on 6 targets. John Mechie III, 5 catches, 48 yards on 8 targets. Dalton Schultz, Xavier Hutchinson, and Robert Woods each had 2 catches for 21 yards. Woods had 2 targets in the game, Hutchinson had 4, and Schultz had 6 targets. And Joe Mixon added 2 catches for 13 yards on 3 targets. Alright, nothing for the field goal kickers here. Tommy Townsend was a busy man. He had 6 punts, averaging 48.2. His long punt is 69. Sorry about that. Move this cord over there. There we go. With 1 touchback and 3 inside the 20-yard line. That'll work. Okay, your leading tacklers for the Texans include Eric Murray with 9 total tackles. Christian Harris had 5 total tackles. Kamari Lassiter, 6 total tackles. And then you had 3 solo tackles apiece from Kalen Bullock, Jake Hansen, and Miles Bryant. Will Anderson added 3 tackles, a half a sack, and a pass defense for the Texans. Total yards, 432 for Baltimore, 211 for Houston. Passing and rush yards both favored the Ravens. Passing yards were 181 to 153. Rush yards were 251 to 58. The Ravens had 25 first downs versus just 10 for Houston. The Ravens were 4 of 9 on 3rd down. The Texans were 4 for 15 on 3rd down and 0 for 2 on 4th down. 3 penalties, 30 yards for the Ravens, 1 sack taken for 3, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 5 penalties, 49 yards for the Texans, 5 sacks taken for 37, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 6 punts. The Ravens got into ball hawk territory as they possessed the ball for 35 minutes and 21 seconds, while the Texans possessed the ball for 24 minutes and 39 seconds. Closing line was Baltimore minus 6.5, and the over-under was 47. Alright, this was well short of that with just 33 points. I picked the Ravens to win, the Texans to cover, so I go 2-0 straight up and 1-1 ATS. Alright, the final Thursday night football game of 2024 was a snoozer to say the least, as the Seattle Seahawks defeated the Chicago Bears in a defensive battle 6-3. The Seahawks improved to 9-7, while the Bears dropped their 10th game in a row and fall to 4-12. We'll begin with individual numbers first for the Seahawks. Efficient game for Geno Smith, just couldn't find the end zone though. 17 of 23, 160 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 92.7 QB rating. Zach Charbonnet led the Seahawks ground attack with 15 carries, 57 yards. And Kenny McIntosh, second-year rusher out of Georgia, had 7 carries for 46. Geno Smith added 3 carries for 19 yards. As far as your Seattle receivers, you have Noah Fant leading the way, 4 catches, 43 yards on 5 targets. DK Metcalf, 3 catches, 42 yards on 3 targets. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 3 grabs, 32 yards on 6 targets. Tyler Lockett, 3 receptions, 20 yards on 4 targets. And Zach Charbonnet, 3 for 19 on 3 targets. Jason Myers was 2 for 2 on field goals. His long was 50 with no extra points. And Michael Dixon had 6 punts averaging 48, long punt of 58 with 3 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Seahawks include Devin Witherspoon, 6 solo tackles and a sack. Leonard Williams had 5 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Boye Mafe, he had 4 solo tackles. Josh Jobe likewise had 4 solo tackles. Kobe Bryant, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Julian Love, 5 tackles. Uchenna Nwosu had 4 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. Ernest Jones, 6 tackles. Alright. Jaron Reed recorded a sack. Rayshawn Jenkins recorded a sack. And Derek Hall recorded a sack for Seattle. For the Bears, Caleb Williams, pretty bad game. 16 of 28, 122 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 53 passer rating. And 5 carries for 37 yards. DeAndre Swift held to 53 yards on 12 rush attempts, averaging 4.4 per run. Your leading receivers are DJ Moore, 6 catches, 54 yards on 8 targets. DeAndre Swift, 4 for 28 on 5 targets. And Keenan Allen, 5 for 25 yards on 8 targets. Cairo Santos, 1 for 1 on field goals, long attempt 42, no extra points. Torrey Taylor, 7 punts, averaging 46.7, long punt of 50, and 5 of those 7 punts inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Chicago Bears include TJ Edwards, 6 tackles, 6 total tackles. Tremaine Edmonds also has 6 total tackles plus a pass defense. Jalen Johnson, 5 total tackles. Kevin Byard, 4 solo tackles. Kyler Gordon, 6 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Darrell Taylor, 4 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Jonathan Owens, 4 tackles. Brian Colbert had 4 tackles and a sack. Montez Sweat, 2 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And Jacob Martin added a forced fumble for the Bears. Total yards, 265 for the Seahawks and 179 for the Bears. Passing favored Seattle, 143-76. Rushing favored Seattle as well, 122-103. And not a lot of first downs on either side, only 12 for the Seahawks and 11 for the Bears. Seattle was 5 of 13 on third down, while Chicago finished 5 of 15 on third down and 1 for 2 on fourth down. 3 penalties, 25 yards for the Seahawks, 3 sacks taken for 17, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 6 punts. 4 plays, 23 yards, or rather 4 penalties, 23 yards for the Bears, 7 sacks taken for 46 yards, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 7 punts. Chicago actually won time of possession in this game, 30 minutes, 20 seconds to 29 minutes and 40 seconds for the Seahawks. Closing line was Seattle -4 and the over-under was 42.5. I took the Seahawks to win and to cover. I won the straight-up pick, bringing me to 3-0. Lose the ATS, falling to 1-2 as we go into the Saturday triple header. And game 1 on Saturday was a one-sided affair, as the Los Angeles Chargers clinched a spot in the playoffs with a 40-7 beatdown of the New England Patriots. LA improves to 10-6 while the Patriots fall to 3-13. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Chargers. Great game for Justin Herbert. 26 of 38, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 116.2 QB rating. Taylor Heineke went 0 for 2 and had a 39.6 passer rating. Leading rushers for the Chargers include J.K. Dobbins, 19 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Hassan Haskins, 8 carries, 30 yards. And Kamani Vidal, 5 carries, 24 yards. Justin Herbert added 12 yards on 3 rushes. As far as the receivers, Ladd McConkey had a pretty good game. 8 catches, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Quentin Johnston, 5 for 48 yards on 8 targets. Josh Palmer, 4 for 41 yards on 6 targets. Darius Davis, 2 catches, 29 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Stone Smart, 2 for 23 on 2 targets. And Will Dissly, 2 for 21 on 3 targets. Cameron Dicker, 4 for 4 on field goals. Long was 41, 4 for 4 on extra points. J.K. Scott, 2 punts averaging 46, long punt of 53, with 1 punt inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Chargers include Christian Fulton with 5 solo tackles. Troy Dye had 5 total tackles. Tarheeb Still, 4 solo tackles. Tony Jefferson, he had 4 total tackles. Tuli Tuipulotu, he had 3 solo tackles and a sack. Elijah Moden had 4 tackles in this game. And according to head coach Jim Harbaugh, Moden has a broken fibula and will sit out the rest of 2024. So he will miss the season finale with the Raiders and their run during the playoffs. That's unfortunate for him. Junior Colston had 4 total tackles, and Derwin James had 2 solo tackles and 2 sacks for the Chargers. For the New England Patriots, Drake May was 12 of 22 for 117 yards with 1 touchdown and no interceptions. He had a quarterback rating of 84.9. Jacoby Brissett was 1 for 2 for -2 yards with no touchdowns and an interception and a 56.3 passer rating. On the rushing side, Antonio Gibson had 12 carries, 63 yards, and Drake May 6 for 32. For what it's worth, Ramondre Stevenson had 2 carries for a single yard. Leading receivers for the Patriots include Demario Douglas. 4 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Keyshawn Boutte, 4 for 28 on 5 targets. Kendrick Bourne, 2 catches, 22 yards on 4 targets. And Austin Hooper, 3 for 19 yards on 3 targets. Joey Sly had no field goals and was 1 for 1 on extra points. Bryce Baringer, he finished the day with 4 punts, averaging 55 yards. Long punt was 64, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Patriots include Kyle Duggar with 9 total tackles. Not sure why it's doing that. I'll come back to him. Here we go. Marte Mapu had 7 tackles. That's what I was having trouble with. Jelani Tavai led the team with 10 tackles. Jonathan Jones had 6 tackles, I think. Yep. Devin Godshaw, 8 tackles. Isaiah Bolden had 4 tackles. And Sion Takitaki had 8 tackles. Total yards were 428 for the Chargers, 181 for the Patriots. That's all for them. Passing yards favored the Chargers, 281 to 85. Rush yards also favored the Chargers, 147 to 96. 29 first downs for Los Angeles, 11 for New England. The Chargers were an impressive 10 of 17 on 3rd down and 2 for 2 on 4th down. While the Patriots, on the opposite side of impressive, they were 2 of 10 on 3rd down and 0 for 3 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 54 yards for the Chargers, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and only 2 punts. 7 penalties, 60 yards for the Patriots, 4 sacks taken for 30, 1 lost fumble, no interception, and 4 punts. Now look at this time of possession. It's more than 2-1 to the Chargers. At 40 minutes and 34 seconds, they are in ball hawk territory. The Patriots, meanwhile, had the ball for 19 minutes and 26 seconds. Closing line was LA minus 6.5, and the over-under was 41.5. Okay, the two teams combined for 47, so it hits the over here. I took the Chargers to win and to cover, and I improved to 4-0 straight up in Week 17 and 2-2 at my spread picks. Game 2 of the Saturday tripleheader was by far the entertaining of the trio, as the Cincinnati Bengals continue to keep their playoff hopes alive by beating the Denver Broncos in overtime, 30-24. So the Bengals even their record at 500. They are now 8-8 on the season. And Denver, who once again failed to lock up the last playoff spot in the AFC, falls to 9-7 and puts them in a really difficult position to get into the playoffs. We'll start with individual numbers for the Cincinnati Bengals. And how about Joe Burrow? If the Bengals weren't a bad team, I think he'd be your MVP right now. 39 of 49, 412 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 122.1 QB rating. plus 4 carries, 25 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Chase Brown had 20 carries, 67 yards. And injured his ankle late in regulation, did not return to the game. And signs are pointing to Brown that he might not play in Sunday's season finale at the Steelers, as he did not practice the last 2 days. Khalil Herbert came in for him, went 4 carries, 23 yards. My offensive player of the week for week 17 is T. Higgins. He had 11 catches for 131 yards and 3 touchdowns on 12 targets. Jamar Chase, not a bad game for him either. 9 catches for 102 on 15 targets. Mike Gesicki, pretty good game as well. 10 catches, 86 yards on 12 targets. Andre Yosivas, 3 catches, 59 yards on 4 targets. And Chase Brown, 4 for 24 on 4 targets before leaving with that injury. Cade York, 1 for 2 on field goals. His long was only 22, which is a chip shot. And 3 for 3 on extra points. Ryan Reckow had just 1 punt for 47 yards, and it landed inside the 20-yard line. Your leading tacklers for the Bengals include Cam Taylor-Britt, 8 tackles. Joseph Osai, 8 tackles, half a sack, forced fumble, and a pass defense. Jermaine Pratt, 7 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Mike Hilton, 7 tackles. Josh Newton had 5 tackles. Akeem Davis-Gaither closes the game with 6 total tackles and a forced fumble. Trey Hendrickson added 3 tackles and half a sack. And Cedric Johnson had 2 solo tackles and a sack for the Bengals. Flipping the coin to the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix was efficient himself. 24 of 31, 219 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 114.9 QB rating, plus 7 carries, 31 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin led Denver's ground game, 10 carries, 69 yards. And Audric Estime, this is the rookie running back from Notre Dame, he had 9 carries for 24 yards. Leading receivers for the Broncos include Marvin Mims Jr., 8 catches for 103 and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. Courtland Sutton, 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. And Devon Vele had 2 catches for 27 yards on 2 targets. Will Lutz, 1 for 1 on field goals, long was 30, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Riley Dixon, 4 punts, averaging 41.5 yards, long punt of 48. Alright, leading tacklers for the Broncos, and they had some big numbers for a couple of their players, including Riley Moss, who led the team with 14 tackles, and Brandon Jones, who had 13 tackles. PJ Locke, he closes with 9 tackles. Jaquan McMillan had 7 tackles. Pat Surtain II, 6 tackles and a forced fumble. Cody Barton, he had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Jonathan Cooper finishes with 4 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Justin Sternad, he had 4 tackles. And my defensive player of the game is also, and our defensive player of the week is also from this same game, just on the other side for the Broncos. And that's Zach Allen. He had 7 tackles and 3.5 sacks. Meanwhile, Dondrea Tillman added a sack as well for the Broncos, plus 3 tackles. Total yards, almost 500 yards for the Bengals, 499 to be exact, to 329 for the Broncos. Passing yards, big edge to Cincinnati, 384 to 206. Rush yards are a slight advantage to Denver, 123 to 115. The Bengals had 34, count them, 34 first downs, while the Broncos had 19. Denver was not good in late downs, 4 of 12 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. As for Cincinnati, they were 7 of 13 on third down and 1 for 3 on fourth down. 7 penalties, 35 yards for the Broncos, 2 sacks taken for 13, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 4 punts. 3 penalties, 15 yards for the Bengals, 7 sacks taken for 28, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 1 punt. Time of possession puts Cincinnati deep in ball hog territory at 41 minutes, 56 seconds. Denver, meanwhile, had the ball for 26 minutes and 57 seconds. Closing line was Cincinnati -3 and the over-under was 50.5. I took the Bengals to win and cover, and I'm still perfect in my straight-up picks at 5-0, while I moved to 3-2 in my spread picks. Final game on Saturday sees the Los Angeles Rams beat the Arizona Cardinals 13-9. And we'll see if that's enough to clinch LA the division title as they move to 10-6 on the season, while the Cardinals are down at 7-9. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Rams, starting with Matthew Stafford. Ho-hum game. Not good, not great either. 17 of 32, 189 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 71 QB rating. And 6 carries, 16 yards. Kyren Williams was held to 13 carries, 56 yards, and a touchdown, but he averaged 4.3 per run. Leading receivers for the Rams include Puka Nacua, 10 for 129 on 14 targets. Cooper Kupp had just 1 reception for 29 yards on 3 targets. Kyren Williams added 3 catches for 16 yards on 3 targets. Joshua Carty, 2 for 2 on field goals, long attempt 53, 1 for 1 on extra points. Ethan Evans, 6 punts, averaging 49.8, long punt of 57, with no touchbacks and 4 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Rams include Cameron Kitchens, 8 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Omar Spates and Cameron Curl had 10 tackles apiece. Curl also had a pass defense. Byron Young, 8 tackles and a sack. Akilo Witherspoon, 6 tackles, 2 passes defense, and the game-winning interception in the closing seconds. You had 5 total tackles from Quentin Lake, 6 total tackles from Christian Roseboom. Michael Holt had 7 tackles, and Darius Williams added 4 tackles and a pass defense. Braden Fisk, meanwhile, had 2 solo tackles and a sack for the Rams. For the Cardinals, Kyler Murray threw the ball early and often, 33 of 48 for 321 with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, 'and a passer rating of 76.8. Alright, leading the rushing charge for Arizona is Michael Carter with 13 carries, 70 yards, and Kyler Murray, 4 carries for 32. Alright, Trey McBride, great game for the second-year tight end. 12 catches, the third-year tight end. Yeah, third-year tight end. He had 12 catches, 123 yards, and his first NFL touchdown on 16 targets. Long time coming for Trey McBride, getting into the end zone, so congratulations. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 6 catches, 96 yards on 10 targets. Elijah Higgins, 2 catches, 23 yards on 3 targets. And Michael Wilson, 4 catches, 22 yards on 6 targets. Chad Ryland, 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 28, 0 for 1 on extra points. Michael Palardi, 4 punts averaging 41. Long punt was 50. Leading tacklers for the Cardinals include Kazir White with 8 total tackles. Mack Wilson Sr. with 6 total tackles. Jalen Thompson also has 6 total tackles. Sean Murphy Bunting 4 tackles. LJ Collier 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. Dante Stills also had 2 solo tackles. Buda Baker has 7 tackles and 2 passes defense. Total yards favored the Cardinals as they outgained the Rams. 396 for Arizona, 257 for LA. Passing yards for 283 to 189 advantage Cardinals. Rush yards 113 to 68 advantage Cardinals. And it was a 2-1 edge to Arizona on first downs. 24 versus 12 for the Rams. The Cardinals were 6 of 13 on third down and 0 for 2 on fourth down, while the Rams were 6 for 15 on third down with no fourth downs. 9 penalties, 62 yards for the Cardinals, 4 sacks taken for 38, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 4 punts. 7 penalties, 46 yards for the Rams. No sacks taken, no interceptions, no fumbles lost, and 6 punts. The Cardinals are in ball hawk territory as they held the ball for 36 minutes, 55 seconds versus 23 minutes and 5 seconds for the Rams. Closing line was LA -6 and the over-under was 49. I took the Rams to win and the Rams to cover. I stayed perfect in my straight-up picks at 6-0. But my ATS record is now 3-3 as we move into these Sunday games. And we'll start off with a blowout on the pirate ship as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers jack stomped the Carolina Panthers 48-14. The Bucs keep their playoff and NFC South title hopes alive with a record of 9-7, while the Panthers are now 4-12. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Buccaneers, starting with Baker Mayfield. A near perfect game from him. 27-32, 359 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 153 passer rating. He was so close to that perfect 158.3 passer rating. Bucky Irving easily had one of his best games as a pro. 20 carries, 113 yards, plus 4 receptions for 77 yards on 4 targets. So this is nearly a 200 scrimmage yard game for Bucky Irving. Sean Tucker, 8 carries, 39 yards, and Rashad White, 6 for 30 yards. As for the remainder of Tampa Bay's receivers, you've got Mike Evans, 8 catches, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. We talked about Bucky Irving, so we'll move Next on the list, the Devin Culp. He had 3 catches, 52 yards on 4 targets. Jalen McMillan, 5 for 51 and 2 scores on 5 targets. Payne Durham, 2 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. And Ryan Miller finishes with 2 catches, 26 yards on 4 targets. Chase McLaughlin, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 34. And a perfect 6 for 6 on extra points. Jack Browning had just 1 punt for 52 yards. Leading tacklers for the Buccaneers include Zion McCullum, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Yaya Diaby, 3 tackles and a sack. KJ Britt had 3 tackles. Logan Hall also had 3 tackles plus a sack. 3 tackles each from Jordan Whitehead and Tyke Smith. And sacks were also added in this game by Anthony Nelson and Kalijah Kancey. For the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young had an okay game. Not something to write home about, though. 15 of 28, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 100.7 QB rating. The leading rusher, if you can call him that, is Raheem Blackshear. 8 carries for just 20 yards. Adam Thielen, proven to the NFL that he is unguardable. He had 5 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. Jalen Coker, 2 catches, 35 yards on 2 targets. And Xavier Legette, 5 grabs for 28 yards on 9 targets for the rookie. Eddie Pinheiro, 0 for 1 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Johnny Hecker, 5 punts, averaging 45.2, long punt of 51. 3 inside the 20-yard line, and he also had a punt blocked. Leading tacklers for the Panthers include Chandler Wooten, 14 tackles. Jacoby Windman, 10 tackles, a half a sack, and a pass defense. 12 tackles for Xavier Woods. Mike Jackson, 7 tackles. Damani Richardson had 9 tackles. Dane Jackson, 6 tackles. DJ Wanham had 5 tackles. DJ Johnson, he finishes with 3 tackles. Caleb Farley also had 3 tackles. And Jaden Crumedy, 3 tackles and half a sack for the Panthers. Total yards, Tampa Bay 551 to 204 for Carolina. Passing yards were 349 for the Bucs, 165 for the Panthers. Rush yards, 202 for the Buccaneers and 39 for the Panthers. And look at those first downs. 33 for Tampa Bay versus just 13 for Carolina. Carolina was 2 for 9 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, was awesome on 3rd down, finishing 10 of 14. 4 penalties, 30 yards for the Panthers, 5 sacks taken for 38, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 6 punts. 5 penalties, 40 yards for the Buccaneers, 2 sacks taken for 10, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 1 punt. The Panthers clearly in ball hawk territory as they possessed for 41 minutes, 11 seconds. The Panthers for a measly 18 minutes and 49 seconds. Closing line was Tampa Bay minus 8.5, and the over-under was 48. I took Tampa Bay to win, and for some odd reason, Carolina to cover. I was expecting a much closer game. Oh well. I stayed perfect with my straight up picks at 7-0. I'm back under 500 in my ATS picks though at 3-4. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles get their first season sweep of the Dallas Cowboys since 2011 and clinched the NFC East title for the third time in 6 years after hammering the Cowboys at Lincoln Financial Field 41-7, and that's without Jalen Hurts under center, by the way. The Eagles are now 13-3 and again champs of the NFC East. The eliminated Dallas Cowboys dropped to 7-9. We'll start with individual numbers for the Eagles. Kenny Pickett was the starter in this game for Jalen Hurts. Pickett finished 10 of 15 for 143 yards with 1 touchdown and no interceptions and a 119.6 QB rating. But then he would suffer an injury to his ribs, which sidelined him in the third quarter. And then Tanner McKee, the second-year QB out of Stanford, would come in for Philadelphia. And he was 3 for 4 for 54 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, and a 156.3 passer rating. Kenny Pickett also added a rushing touchdown in this game. But really, when we talk about the Eagles running game, we gotta talk about Saquon Barkley, and he had another monster game. 31 carries for 167 yards, averaging 5.4 yards per tote. And according to Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni, the team will rest some players for their Week 18 finale against the Giants, and that includes Saquon, who needs just 101 rushing yards to break Eric Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record of 2105. So it looks like that may have been Saquon's last regular season look. Likewise for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, who paced the Eagles' receiving corps once again. Smith had 6 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets, while Brown had 3 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Jake Elliott, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 31, 5 for 5 on extra points. Braden Mann, 3 punts averaging 49.3, long punt of 54, 2 touchbacks, and 1 inside the 20-yard line. Quinyon Mitchell is among the tackle leaders for the Eagles. He had 5 solo tackles and a pass defense. Jalix Hunt had 6 tackles. Cooper DeJean had 6 tackles, so both rookies, each with 6 tackles. You had 5 tackles for Josh Wett. Oren Burks had 8 tackles and a forced fumble. Thomas Booker IV had 5 tackles and half a sack. The other half went to Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who also had 3 tackles. 3 tackles as well for Darius Slay, 7 tackles for Zach Bond, and a pass defense. And Nolan Smith had 2 tackles and a forced fumble for the Eagles. For the Dallas Cowboys, this is another rough game for them and what has been a very disappointing 2024. Cooper Rush was 15 of 28 for 147 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions and a 50.7 passer rating. He would be benched for Trey Lance briefly. He went 1 for 1 for a single yard and a 79.2 passer rating. The only bright spot on this Cowboys offense is Rico Dowdle. He went 23 carries for 104 yards. And only one catch for 4 yards on one target. The receivers are led by Brandon Cooks, 4 for 52 yards on 8 targets. He's now the number 1 target for the Cowboys, with CeeDee Lamb sitting out the rest of the year. Jalen Tolbert, 3 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. And Jake Ferguson, 3 catches, 18 yards on 5 targets. Brandon Aubrey, 0 for 1 on field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points. Brian Anger, 4 punts, averaging 49.5, long punt of 62, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading the tacklers for the Cowboys, you have Malik Hooker with 9 tackles. Eric Kendricks also with 9 tackles. Deron Bland, 6 tackles in a pass defense. Chauncey Goldson had a pass defense plus 4 solo tackles. Andrew Booth also had a forced fumble, or not a forced fumble, but a pass defense to go along with 6 tackles. Maris Leofal, 4 tackles. And Mozzie Smith had 3 tackles. Total yards, 376 for the Eagles, 268 for the Cowboys. Rush or pass yards, 197 to 141. And rush yards, 179 to 127, both in favor of Philly. The Eagles had 20 first downs, the Cowboys with 16. 6 of 14 third downs for the Cowboys, 6 of 13 third downs, and 1 for 1 fourth downs for the Eagles. Dallas had 8 penalties, 69 yards, 1 sack taken for 7, 2 lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 4 punts. 4 penalties, 25 yards for the Eagles. No sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 49 seconds for Philadelphia. 27 minutes, 11 seconds for the Dallas Cowboys. Closing line was Philadelphia -8, over under 37.5. I took the Eagles to win and cover. And I remain perfect in my straight up picks halfway through the schedule at 8-0 and 4-4 in my straight up picks. If you're joining late, you're watching the week that was, as we're taking a look at the team and player statistical numbers from week 17 in the NFL. After the recap, we'll take a look at my week 18 power rankings, the latest NFL playoff picture, and the up-to-date playoff clinching and elimination scenarios entering the final week of this 2024 season. All that is coming up shortly, but now let's jump back into the recap. Our next game is clearly the upset of the week and maybe the year, as the New York Giants upset the Indianapolis Colts 45-33, ending New York's 10-game losing streak as they improve to 3-13 on the season. Meanwhile, for the Indianapolis Colts, this is a bad loss, bad enough to knock them out of playoff contention officially at 7-9. We'll begin with individual numbers for the New York Giants, beginning with Drew Lock. Where did this come from? 17 of 23 for 309 with 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 155.3 QB rating. Drew Lock had no yards on 5 rushes, but did score a rushing touchdown. Tyrone Tracy had 20 carries, 59 yards, and Devin Singletary had 5 for 21. Malik Neighbors was a candidate for Offensive Player of the Week, as he went 7 catches for 171 and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. He averaged over 24 yards per reception. Wan'Dale Robinson had 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. And Darius Slayton had 1 catch, 32 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Jake Gilliam, 3 punts, averaging 48.7, long punt of 51. And I forgot about Graham Gano. I went out of turn here. He was 1 for 1 on field goals, as long was 30, and 6 for 6 on extra points. Leading tacklers for the Giants include Jason Pinnock with 10 tackles, Dane Belton with 8 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. Deontay Banks had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Drew Phillips, 6 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception as well. Brian Burns, 6 tackles. Ty Summers, 11 tackles. And Darius Mosal had 8 tackles. Further down the list, you have Raheem Nunez Roches. He had 2 solo tackles and a sack. And Kayvon Thibodeau, 2 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Adoree Jackson also added a couple tackles and a pass defense for the Giants. For the eliminated Indianapolis Colts, Joe Flacco, so-so game for him, 26 of 38, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and a 90.9 QB rating. Jonathan Taylor continuing to rack up rushing yards, as he had 218 last week. He finished with 125 on 32 carries and 2 touchdowns. And 2 catches for 11 on 4 targets, as we pivot over to the receivers. Alec Pierce had 6 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. Michael Pittman Jr., 9 catches, 109, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Kylan Granson, 3 for 34 on 4 targets. Josh Downs, 3 for 22 on 4 targets. And Adonai Mitchell, 2 for 22 on 4 targets. Matt Gay, 2 for 3 on field goals, long attempt 32, 3 for 3 on extra points. Rigoberto Sanchez, only 1 punt for 32 yards, and it ended up inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Colts, and there are not many to talk about. Zaire Franklin led the way with 14 total tackles and a forced fumble. Nick Cross had 7 tackles. Jalen Jones had 6 tackles, as did Grover Stewart. And Kenny Moore had 3 tackles, and Jonathan Blackman had 4 tackles. Total yards, 446 for the Colts, 389 for the Giants. Passing yards for 320 to 309 Indianapolis. Rush yards were 126 to 80, also favoring Indianapolis. First downs also goes to the Colts, 25 to 15. Both teams finished 7 of 13 on 3rd down. The Colts were 1 for 2 on 4th down. New York 0 for 1 on 4th down. Just 3 penalties for 21 yards for the Colts. 2 sacks taken for 10. 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, and a punt. 7 penalties, 94 yards for the Giants. No sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 33 minutes, 23 seconds for the Colts. 26 minutes, 37 seconds for the Giants. Closing line was Indy -7. Over-under was 40.5, and they nearly doubled that total as the 2 teams combined for 78 points. I took the Colts to win and to cover, and I lost both picks. So that's my first straight-up loss of the week against 8 wins. And I'm back under 500 with my spread picks at 4 and 5. Alright. Two of my bottom teams in the power rankings did battle in the Superdome on Sunday as the Las Vegas Raiders defeated the New Orleans Saints 25-10. As Vegas moves to 4-12, this is back-to-back wins for Vegas, by the way. And for New Orleans, they dropped to 5-11. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Raiders, starting with Aiden O'Connell. 20 of 35, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 97.6 passer rating. Amir Abdullah, 20 carries, 115. He ran the ball effectively at 5.8 a clip. Alexander Madison, 10 for 32 yards. On the receiving side, Brock Bowers, 7 catches, 77 yards, and 7 targets. That's a lot of 7s, folks. Jacoby Myers, 5 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. Amir Abdullah, 3 for 32 on 4 targets. And Trey Tucker, 2 catches, 24 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Daniel Carlson was 4 for 4 on field goals, long attempt 54, and 1 of 2 on extra points. A.J. Cole averaged 49.5 yards on 4 punts. His long punt was an impressive 71 yards, with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Robert Spillane had 8 tackles, a sack, and 2 passes defense for the Raiders defense. DeCamarion Richardson had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Nate Hobbs, 4 tackles. Clavon Chayasin had 3 solo tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Trayvon Morig, he had 5 tackles. Isaiah Polamau had 4 tackles and 2 passes defense. Divine Diablo had 4 tackles. Adam Butler had 4 tackles and a forced fumble. Tyree Wilson had 3 tackles. And Thomas Harper also had 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Butler, Wilson, and Harper each had half a sack. The other half sack went to Anthony Carter II. On the Saints side of things, Spencer Rattler, bad game. 20 of 36, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 59.7 passer rating. He led the team in rushing as well. 3 carries for 46 yards. Oh, okay, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now on the Saints. He had 5 carries, 20 yards. Leading receivers for New Orleans include Jawan Johnson, 6 for 66 yards on 10 targets. Foster Moreau, 3 catches, 47 yards, and a TD on 5 targets. Dante Pettis, 3 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets. Kevin Austin Jr., 1 catch, 23 yards on 2 targets. And Cedric Wilson, he had 3 catches, 17 yards on 4 targets. Blake Grupe, 1 for 1 on field goals, long 34, 1 for 1 on extra points. Michael Haybaugh, 7 punts at 47.1 on average, long punt of 64, and 3 inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Saints includes Pete Werner with 13 tackles. Demario Douglas also had 13 tackles. 8 tackles for Will Harris. I don't know what that was. Kalen Saunders had 7 tackles. Ugo Amadi, he had 4 tackles and a pass defense. Tyrann Mathieu had 3 solo tackles and a pass defense. Cam Jordan, 3 tackles and a sack. And Nathan Shepard had 4 tackles for the Saints. All right, total yards, 388 for Vegas, 269 for New Orleans. Passing and rushing both favored the Raiders, 232 and 188 in passing yards to Vegas, and 156 to 81 in rush yards to Vegas. The Raiders had 22 first downs versus 13 by the Saints. Vegas an impressive 10 of 18 on third down, while the Saints putrid, 1 for 10 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. 3 penalties, 20 yards for the Raiders, 1 sack taken for 10, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, 4 punts. 10 penalties, 85 yards for the Saints, 4 sacks taken for 30, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, 7 punts. Vegas in ball hog territory this week, possessing the ball for 37 minutes and 50 seconds versus 22 minutes 10 seconds for the Saints. Closing line was Las Vegas minus 1.5, over under 37.5, and they came very, very close to it. I took the Raiders to win and to cover, and I won both picks. 9-1 straight up, 5-5 ATS. Alright. That brings us down to my lock of the week. And this week it was the Buffalo Bills blasting off against the New York Jets, winning 40-14. Buffalo improves to 13-3 on the season. They are locked into the number 2 seed in the AFC no matter what happens. And the Jets lose yet again. They fall to 4-12. We'll start with individual numbers for the Bills. We'll start with Josh Allen. 16-27, only 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 104.2 passer rating. Mitch Trubisky completed a pass for 69 yards and a touchdown and a perfect 158.3 QB rating. But he had minus 1 yards rushing on 2 carries. And Allen had 5 carries, 17 yards, and a rushing touchdown. James Cook led Buffalo's ground game with 15 carries, 53 yards, and a rushing touchdown as well. By the way, that 69-yard touchdown by Mitch Trubisky, it went to former San Diego State wide receiver Tyrell Shavers, who had the 1 catch for 69 yards and the 1 touchdown on his only target. Boy, did he make it count. Amari Cooper, 3 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Mac Hollins, 2 for 33 on 2 targets. Keon Coleman, 3 catches, 27 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Khalil Shakir, 3 for 25 yards on 6 targets. And Dalton Kincaid, 2 catches, 24 yards on 2 targets. Tyler Bass, 1 for 1 on field goals, long attempt 39, 5 for 5 on extra points. Sam Martin, 3 punts, averaging 45.7, long punt of 51, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Bills include, here we go, Joe Andreessen, 8 tackles. Cole Bishop, 5 solo tackles. Teron Johnson, 4 solo tackles. AJ Epinesa, 4 solo tackles and a sack. Ed Oliver with 4 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Taylor Rapp with 4 tackles. Matt Milano with 5 tackles. And Von Miller with 2. Then there's Von Miller with 2 solo tackles and a sack. And Christian Benford with 3 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. For the Jets, Jets. Aaron Rodgers was efficient but bad. 12 of 18 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 44 QB rating. Yowza. Tyrod Taylor would replace Rodgers, and he was much better. 11 of 14 for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 131 QB rating. Breece Hall held the 10 carries, 45 yards. Isaiah Davis, 3 for 35 yards. And Braylon Allen, 6 carries, 26 yards. Garrett Wilson, 7 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Tyler Conklin, 8 for 57 and a touchdown, also on 8 targets. And Devontae Adams, 5 for 47 yards on 8 targets as well. Alright, no kicking stats for the Jets. Thomas Morstead had 3 punts, averaging 47.7, long punt of 56, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. That is Quincy Williams. Awesome. Quincy Williams and Jamie Sherwood each had 10 tackles and a pass defense. Tony Adams added 5 tackles. DJ Reed also had 5 tackles. Chuck Clark with 8 tackles. Sauce Gardner, 3 solo tackles and a pass defense. But he would leave this game with a hamstring injury. And we'll see if he'll play Sunday in their season finale with the Dolphins. Total yards were 348 for the Bills and 281 for the Jets. Passing yards favored Buffalo, 251 to 169, while rush yards favored New York, 112-97. The Bills had 23 first downs. The Jets had 20. The Jets finished 4 of 9 on 3rd down. The Bills 8 of 14, and both teams 0 for 1 on 4th down. The New York Jets had an astounding 16 penalties for 120 yards. Not good. 4 sacks taken for 26, 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, and 3 punts. 7 penalties, 60 yards for the Bills. No sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts as well. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 17 seconds for Buffalo, 28 minutes, 43 seconds for the Jets. Closing line, Buffalo minus 10, over under 44. Again, this was my lock of the week as I took the Bills to win and cover. I am now 10-1 straight up and 6-5 in my spread picks. The last early game on Sunday afternoon was a disgusting battle in the AFC South as the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Tennessee Titans for the second time in 4 weeks, winning in Jacksonville 20-13. And Jacksonville will move ahead of Tennessee in the AFC South rankings at 4-12, while the Titans fall to 3-13. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Jaguars. Mac Jones, 15 of 22, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 122.2 QB rating, plus 6 carries, 22 yards. Travis Etienne Jr., 15 carries, 49 yards. Tank Bixby, 11 carries, 33 yards. Byron Thomas Jr., 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Parker Washington, 3 for 31, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Cam Little, 2 for 2 on field goals, 48 was his long, 2 for 2 extra points. Logan Cook, 3 punts, averaging 43.3, long punt of 48, 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Jaguars include Andre Sisco with 8 tackles. Monteric Brown, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Tyson Campbell, 5 solo tackles. Devin Lloyd, 6 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Jerrion Jones, 5 total tackles. Foye Oluokun, 11 tackles, which actually led the team, plus a pass defense. Josh Hines Allen, 6 tackles and a sack. And Antonio Johnson with 3 solo tackles. Trayvon Walker and Mason Smith each had 2 tackles and a sack. Walker also added a forced fumble for the Jaguars. Meanwhile, for the still free-falling Titans, Mason Rudolph was 19 of 31 for 193 with a touchdown and an interception and a 76.4 QB rating. Great game for Tajay Spears in place of the injured Tony Pollard. Spears went 20 carries for 95 yards and 3 catches for 8 on 4 targets. As we jump over to the receivers. Calvin Ridley, 5 catches, 84 yards on 6 targets. Chig Okonkwo, 5 for 42 yards on 7 targets. Nick Westbrook-Akine, 3 catches, 37 yards on 6 targets. And Tyler Boyd, 2 for 14 on 4 targets. Nick Vannett had a touchdown catch for his only catch and target of the game. Okay, Matthew Wright, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 39, 1 for 1 on extra points. Ryan Stonehouse, 3 punts, averaging 49.7, long punt of 61, 1 touchback, and 1 inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Tennessee Titans, you've got Luke Gifford with 8 tackles and a pass defense. Mike Brown with 8 tackles as well. Daryl Worley, 7 tackles. Roger McCreary, 4 solo tackles. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. with 6 tackles. Jerome Baker, 6 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. Jeffrey Simmons, 5 tackles. Harold Landry, 3 tackles, all solo. Chidobe Awuzie, 3 tackles and a pass defense. And Arden Key with 5 tackles and Trevondre Sweat with 3. Total yards, 337 for the Titans to 295 for the Jaguars. Slight edge in passing yards for the Titans, 178 to 173. Rush yards also favored Tennessee, 159 to 122. First downs also favoring the Titans, 23 to 18. Both teams did good on third down, 7 of 14 for the Titans, 8 of 13 for the Jaguars. Tennessee also finished 1 for 2 on fourth down. 5 penalties, 34 yards for the Titans, 3 sacks taken for 15, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 3 punts. 7 penalties, 50 yards for the Jaguars, 2 sacks taken for a single yard, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and also 3 punts. Time of possession nearly split evenly, 30 minutes, 40 seconds for the Titans, 29 minutes, 20 seconds for the Jaguars. Closing line was a pick'em and the over-under was 38.5, and they came pretty close to that total. I took Tennessee to win, Tennessee to cover. I lost both picks, dropping me to 10-2 straight up and 6-6 on my spread picks. Alright, there are only 2 late games on Sunday afternoon. The first sees the Miami Dolphins, without many of their weapons, defeat the lowly Cleveland Browns 20-3. The Dolphins keep their playoff hopes alive as they move to 8-8 on the season, while the Browns fall to 3-13. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Dolphins, beginning with Tyler Snoop Huntley. 22 of 26, 225 yards, a touchdown and no interceptions, and a 115.5 QB rating. He also led the team with 7 carries, 52 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So a pretty good game for him. Not so much for Devin Achane. It's been a struggle for him this year. Only 10 carries, 25 yards on Sunday against the Browns. Tyreek Hill was Miami's top receiver. 9 catches, 105 yards on 9 targets. Malik Washington had 4 catches, 41 yards on 5 targets. And Jonnu Smith, 3 catches, 26 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. And again, this is without Tua Tagovailoa or Jalen Waddle in the lineup. Jason Sanders, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 54, 2 for 2 on extra points. Jake Bailey, 7 punts, averaging 43.9, long punt 53, 2 touchbacks, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Dolphins include Tyrell Dodson with 15 tackles, plus a pass defense and an interception. Jordan Brooks with 9 tackles. Jordan Poyer with 6 tackles and a pass defense. One of the coolest names ever to exist on this earth, Storm Duck. 6 tackles and a pass defense as well. Emmanuel Ogbah, 5 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Kader Kohou with 4 tackles and a pass defense. And Benito Jones with 4 tackles. Meanwhile, for the Cleveland Browns, the offensive numbers are not great for the most part, including Dorian Thompson-Robinson, also known as DTR. 24 of 47, 170 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 50.8 QB rating. Leading rusher was Donta Foreman, 13 carries, 49 yards. Pierre Strong Jr., 5 carries, 33 yards. But he did suffer a head injury, and according to Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, Strong is in concussion protocol. Jerome Ford held to 6 carries, 22 yards. Leading receivers for the Browns include Jerry Jeudy, 12 catches, 94 yards on 18 targets. Where was this production in Denver, though? Jordan Atkins, 6 catches, 49 yards on 8 targets. Pierre Strong, we just talked about him. He had 3 receptions, 15 yards on 5 targets. Dustin Hopkins, 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 25 and no extra points. Corey Bojorquez, 5 punts, averaging an even 50 yards. Long punt of 68. Leading tacklers for the Browns include Grant Delpit with 9 tackles. Myles Garrett, 4 solo tackles and 2 sacks. He did suffer a thigh injury and did not practice on Tuesday. And there's some more news on Garrett. I want to get to that here quickly. The Athletic Zach Jackson writes that the Browns, quote-unquote, probably have to at least consider trading Myles Garrett. Interesting. Denzel Ward, 4 solo tackles. Mohamed Diabate had, I think, 6 tackles. Yep. Martin Emerson Jr. with 5 tackles. Devin Bush, 4 tackles. Jordan Hicks, 7 tackles. And then you had sacks. You had a sack each by Isaiah McGuire and Cameron Thomas. Total yards, 280 for the Dolphins, 276 for the Browns. They were nearly split even. Passing yards favored Miami, 206, 162. Rush yards favored Cleveland, 114, 74. Both teams had 18 first downs. And in late down situations, both offenses were not good. 2 of 11 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down for the Dolphins. 7 of 17 on third down and 0 for 4 on fourth downs for the Browns. And the penalties flew in this game. 11 penalties, 94 yards for the Dolphins. 4 sacks taken for 19. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 7 punts. And 9 penalties, 84 yards for the Browns. 1 sack taken for 8. 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 5 punts. So again, neither team was safe from the laundry in this game. Time of possession almost split as well. 30 minutes, 41 seconds for the Dolphins. 29 minutes, 19 seconds for the Cleveland Browns. Closing line was Miami -3 and the over-under just 32.5, and they didn't even make that total at all. I took the Dolphins to win, Dolphins to cover, finishing up 11-2 straight up and 7-6 ATS with 3 games left. Then we got our game of the week, which sees the Minnesota Vikings keep their aspirations for the #1 overall seed in the NFC alive by holding off a Packer rally in the fourth quarter and beating Green Bay 27-25. As Minnesota improves to 14-2. The 14 wins are the most by the Vikings in the season since they won 15 games in 1998. And I think we all knew what happened that year. They made it to the NFC Championship game where they would eventually fall short of the Super Bowl. The Packers, meanwhile, takes the L and drops to 11-5. We'll begin with individual numbers. First up for the Vikings. Great game for Sam Darnold. 33 of 43, 377 yards with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception and a 116.1 QB rating. Aaron Jones, the former Packer, had 12 carries, 47 yards against his former team, and Cam Akers, 6 carries, 18 yards. Leading receivers for the Vikings include Justin Jefferson, 8 for 92 yards on 11 targets. Then there's Jalen Naylor, 5 for 81 and a touchdown on 5 targets. Jordan Addison, 6 catches, 69 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. TJ Hawkinson, 5 catches, 68 yards on 6 targets. And Aaron Jones, in addition to his rushing numbers, he did suffer a quad injury in this game. He added 4 catches for 30 yards on 5 targets. He does have a quad contusion. Should be able to practice this week. He was limited in practice today as I'm recording this. Cam Akers did have a receiving touchdown, as well as 2 catches, 15 yards on 3 targets. Will Riker, 2 for 4 on field goals, Long of 50, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Ryan Wright, 2 punts, averaging 35.5, long punt of 41 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Vikings on defense include Blake Cashman with 11 tackles. Get me back in here. Is Blake Cashman with 11 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Stephon Gilmore, 5 solo tackles. Shaq Griffin, 5 tackles. Byron Murphy, 3 solo tackles in a pass defense. Josh Metellus, 3 solo tackles. Harrison Smith, 4 tackles total. Jonathan Bullard, 3 tackles. The other half sack went to Andrew Van Ginkel, who also had 3 tackles. Jonathan Grenard added 2 tackles and a pass defense. And Dallas Turner had a tackle and a sack. And Jalen Naylor added a forced fumble for good measure. Over on the Packers side of the coin, Jordan Love was 19 of 30 for 185 with a touchdown and no interceptions and a 91.7 QB rating. Alright, Josh Jacobs, 17 carries, 69 yards. Emmanuel Wilson, 6 carries, 29 yards. Each had a rushing touchdown. Leading receivers for Green Bay include Romeo Doubs, 7 for 58 yards on 11 targets. Tucker Kraft, 2 for 53 on 3 targets. Dontavian Wicks, 4 for 43 on 5 targets. And Bo Melton, 3 catches, 18 yards on 4 targets. Malik Heath had a touchdown catch for the Packers. That was his only reception and only target. Brandon McManus, 1 for 1 on field goals, long 22, 2 for 2 on extra points. Daniel Whelan, 4 punts, averaging 42.3, long punt of 50, with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Packers include Javon Bullard, 11 tackles. Edgerrin Cooper also had 11 tackles. Keyshawn Nixon, 9 tackles and a pass defense. Eric Wilson with 9 tackles as well. Xavier McKinney, 7 tackles. Isaiah McDuffie, 4 tackles. Carl Brooks, he had 3 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. And Carrington Valentine had 2 solo tackles, a pass defense, and an interception for Green Bay. Total yards, 441 for the Vikings, 271 for the Packers. Passing yards favored Minnesota, 372 to 167. Rush yards favored Green Bay, 104 to 69. The Vikings had 26 first downs, the Packers had 17. Both teams did well on third down, 8 of 14 for the Packers plus 0 for 1 on fourth down, and 6 of 12 on third downs for the Vikings. 7 penalties, 51 yards for Green Bay, 3 sacks taken for 18, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, 4 punts. 7 penalties, 47 yards for Minnesota, 1 sack taken for 5, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 2 punts. Time of possession, Vikings into ball hawk status, 35 minutes, 30 seconds. Packers 24 minutes, 30 seconds. Closing line was Minnesota -1 and the over-under was 49. They barely got over that number. I did take the Packers to win and to cover. Lost both picks. 11-3 straight up and 7-7 in my spread picks. Both Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football were good games. We'll start with Sunday Night Football as the Washington Commanders punched their ticket to the postseason with a 30-24 overtime victory over the Atlanta Falcons. So Washington improves to 11-5. It's the first time they've won at least 11 games in a season since their Super Bowl campaign in 1991. Meanwhile, for the Atlanta Falcons, this is a damaging loss as far as their NFC South title hopes. They dropped to 8-8 and must win and get some help to win the division this upcoming week. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Commanders, starting with Jaden Daniels. 24-36, 227, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 100.1 QB rating. Daniels also led the team in rushing with 16 carries and 127 yards. Bijan Robinson, Brian Robinson Jr., 13 carries, 60 yards. Chris Rodriguez had 5 carries, 16 yards, and a touchdown. On the receiving side, Olamide Zaccheaus, 8 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. Zach Ertz, 6 for 72 and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets. Jamison Crowder, 3 catches, 25 yards on 5 targets. Oops, did not mean to do that. Here we go. Zane Gonzalez, 1 for 1 on field goals, long 31, 3 for 3 on extra points. Tress Way, 3 punts averaging 51, long punt of 61, 2 punts inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Commanders include Quan Martin, 8 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. Michael Davis with 6 solo tackles. Benjamin St. Juste with 3 solo tackles. Jeremy Chin, 5 total tackles and 2 passes defensed. Mike Sanderstill, 3 tackles. Dorrance Armstrong, 4 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Jerzon Newton, he had 3 tackles. Two tackles each for Jeremy Reeves and Javante Jean-Baptiste. And Dexter Fowler added 2 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And for the Falcons, Michael Penix Jr. making his 2nd career start, went 19 of 35 for 223 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception and a 71.5 QB rating. Now we can talk about Bijan Robinson. He had 17 carries, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and 3 catches for 8 yards on 5 targets. Drake London was the leading receiver for Atlanta. 7 catches, 106 yards on 13 targets. Kyle Pitts, 4 for 44 and a touchdown on 5 targets. And Darnell Mooney, 2 catches, 37 yards on 5 targets. Riley Patterson, 1 for 2 on field goals, long 39, 3 for 3 on extra points. Bradley Pinion, 3 punts averaging 47, long punt of 61. Leading tacklers for Atlanta include Jesse Bates, 12 tackles and a sack. Caden Ellis, he had 9 tackles, a pass defense, and an INT. Justin Simmons, 6 solo tackles. Nate Landman, 6 tackles total and a pass defense. Matthew Judon, 4 tackles and a sack. And also adding sacks for the Falcons include J.D. Bertrand, who had 5 tackles. Arnold Ebiketie, who also had 2 solo tackles. And David Onyemata, who had 2 total tackles. Yeah, this Falcons pass rush really coming alive lately. Total yards, 412 for the Commanders and 337 for the Falcons. Passing yards were 211 to 196, advantage Atlanta. Rush yards were 216 to 126, advantage Washington. The Commanders had 29 first downs, the Falcons had 23. Falcons just 2 for 10 on 3rd down, but 2 for 2 on 4th down. Washington was 6 of 13 on 3rd down and 3 for 3 on 4th down. 4 penalties, 25 yards for the Falcons, 2 sacks taken for 12, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, 3 punts. 13 penalties for 108 yards for Washington. 5 sacks taken for 31. No lost fumbles, 1 interception, and also 3 punts. Washington is in ball hawk territory as they possessed the ball for 41 minutes, 32 seconds versus 25 minutes, 46 seconds for Atlanta. Closing line was Washington minus 3.5, over under 46.5, and this game went over the total. I took the Commanders to win and the Commanders to cover. Won both picks. I am now 12-3 straight up and 8-7 in my spread picks. And this long week 17 of football action concludes with the final Monday night game of 2024 as the Detroit Lions, injured and all, continue to keep winning as they hold off the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara by a final of 40-34. The Lions are at 14-2 with the win, and that's a new team record for victories in a single season. Meanwhile, the 49ers' nightmare season close to coming to an emphatic end as they drop to 6-10. We'll begin with individual numbers first for the Lions. Another good game for Jared Goff. 26 of 34, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 132.4 QB rating. Jahmyr Gibbs continues to rack up the yards, 117 on 18 carries and a touchdown. Jamison Williams had 2 carries for -2 yards plus a rushing touchdown. He also led the Lions in receiving. 5 catches, 77 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 8 targets. Sam Laporta, 6 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Jahmyr Gibbs added 4 receptions for 46 on 4 targets. Craig Reynolds, 2 for 35 on 2 targets. And that's Allen Robinson. Okay. Detroit native, played college ball at Penn State. 1 catch, 21 yards on his only target. Jake Bates, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 57, 2 for 4 on extra points, and there was no punts by the Lions. Looking at their defense, you had Terrion Arnold among the leaders with 6 solo tackles, Kirby Joseph with 6 total tackles, 2 passes defense, and 2 interceptions. Then there's Jack Campbell with 9 tackles, Brian Branch with 7 tackles and a sack. Afidu Melifonwu, he had 4 solo tackles. Trevor Nowalski has 5 tackles. Amir Robertson, 2 solo tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defensed. And Miles Adams added a sack for the Lions. For the 49ers, and 4 different players attempting a pass in this game. Brock Purdy did most of the work. 27 of 35, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 INTs, and a 116 passer rating. Josh Dobbs, 3 of 4, 35 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions, and a 101 passer rating for the Pastronaut. Deebo Samuel and Ricky Pearsall each attempted a pass, and both had QB ratings of 39.6. Isaac Guerrero was back. He carried the ball 9 times for 34 yards. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy and Josh Dobbs each had rushing touchdowns for San Francisco. Leading receivers include Ricky Pearsall, had himself a career night. 8 catches, 141 and a touchdown on 10 targets. George Kittle, 8 for 112 on 8 targets. Jawan Jennings, 7 for 67 on 10 targets. Isaac Guerrero, 4 for 65 on 4 targets. And both Deebo Samuel and Kyle Juszczyk each had touchdown receptions for the Niners. Jake Moody, 0 for 2 on field goals, not good. 4 for 5 on extra points, and the Niners had no punts either. Leading tacklers for San Fran include Isaac Yiadom with 7 tackles, Denomador Lenore with 9 tackles, Nick Bosa 8 tackles and 2 sacks, Talanoa Hufanga 6 tackles, Malik Mustafa 4 solo tackles, D. Winters 8 tackles, Fred Warner with 6 tackles, Renardo Green 4 tackles and a pass defense. Total yards were 475 for the 49ers, 439 for the Lions. Passing yards 400 to 287 for San Francisco. Rush yards were 152 to 75 for Detroit. The Niners had 29 first downs, the Lions had 23. And both teams did pretty good on third down. 9 of 14 for Detroit, 5 of 8 for San Francisco. The Lions were 2 of 3 on fourth down, while the Niners were 1 for 1. 6 penalties, 57 yards for the Lions. 2 sacks taken for 16. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and no punts. 5 penalties, 30 yards for the 49ers. 2 sacks taken for 12. No lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and also no punts. One of those rare games where neither team had a punt. Time of possession, Detroit 34 minutes 52 seconds. San Francisco 25 minutes and 8 seconds. Closing line was Detroit minus 3.5, and the over-under is 50.5. And I close out the week taking the Lions to win and cover. And so I finished week 17 with a 13-3 straight up record and a 9-7 spread record. For the season, I am now 172 and 80. Right? 176 and 80. I had to get my math corrected. That's my overall straight up record, 176 and 80. My spread record is back over 500 at 128, 126, and 2. Okay, now to my Week 18 power rankings, and we'll move real quickly on these. Alright, new number 32 team, that's the New Orleans Saints at 5-11. They play Tampa Bay in their season finale on Sunday. Number 31 is the Tennessee Titans at 3-13, hosting the Houston Texans. Number 30 is the Cleveland Browns at 3-13, playing the Baltimore Ravens on Saturday. Number 29 is the New York Giants at 3-13. They're in Philadelphia to finish out the season. Down to number 28, the Carolina Panthers at 4-12, visiting the Atlanta Falcons. Number 27 is the Chicago Bears, 4-12, visiting the Green Bay Packers. Number 26, the New England Patriots at 3-13, home to the Buffalo Bills. Number 25, you got the Las Vegas Raiders at 4-12. They'll host the LA Chargers this week. Number 24, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at 4-12. They're visiting the Indianapolis Colts. Number 23, you've got the New York Jets at 4-12, home against the Miami Dolphins. Number 22 is the Indianapolis Colts at 7-9, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 21, the Dallas Cowboys, 7-9. And they host the playoff-bound Washington Commanders this week. Number 20 is the San Francisco 49ers at 6-10 in the desert to face the Arizona Cardinals. And speaking of the Arizona Cardinals, they're at number 19 with a record of 7-9, and again, they're hosting the 49ers. Number 18 is the Atlanta Falcons at 8-8. They will host the Panthers. Number 17 is the Miami Dolphins, also 8-8. They're at the New York Jets. Number 16, you've got the Seattle Seahawks at 9-7, visiting the Los Angeles Rams. Number 15 is the Houston Texans at 9-7. They're in Nashville this week to face the Tennessee Titans. Number 14, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals at 8-8. They play the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Saturday. Number 13 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 9-7, home to the New Orleans Saints. Number 12 is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-6, hosting the Cincinnati Bengals on Saturday night. Number 11 is the Denver Broncos at 9-7. They will host the Kansas City Chiefs, who will more than likely rest their starters. Number 10 is the LA Chargers at 10-6. They visit the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 9 is the LA Rams, also 10-6. They're home for the Seattle Seahawks. Number 8 is the Washington Commanders at 11-5. They visit the Cowboys in Dallas. Number 7 is the Green Bay Packers at 11-5, visiting the Chicago Bears. Number 6, you've got the Baltimore Ravens at 11-5, hosting the Cleveland Browns on Saturday. Number 5, you've got the Minnesota Vikings at 14-2, visiting the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football, and the final regular season game of the season. Number 4 is the Philadelphia Eagles at 13-3, hosting the New York Giants. Number 3, the Buffalo Bills, also 13-3. They visit the New England Patriots. Number 2 is the Detroit Lions at 14-2, hosting the Minnesota Vikings in the final regular season game of the year on Sunday Night Football. And number 1 are the Kansas City Chiefs at 15-1, visiting the Denver Broncos. So those are my Week 18 power rankings. Now let's take a look at the current NFL playoff race. And outside of a few things, it's starting to come into focus more so in the AFC than in the NFC. Your clinching and elimination scenarios are coming up after we run through the entire playoff picture, and we'll start as always in the AFC. Your division leaders are the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, and Houston Texans. Kansas City has locked up the AFC's number 1 seed. They get the first round bye and home field throughout. Buffalo and Houston have already won their respective divisions, while Baltimore has only clinched a playoff spot. We'll start in the number 1 seed, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs at 15-1. 5-0 versus the West, 10-1 in the AFC. 480 strength of schedule, 458 strength of victory. The AFC East champion Buffalo Bills are 13-3 and sitting in the number 2 spot. 5-0 versus the East, 9-2 in the AFC. 477 strength of schedule, 442 strength of victory. The number 3 seed at the present time are the current AFC North leaders, the Baltimore Ravens. 11-5 overall, 3-2 versus the North, 7-4 in the AFC. 555 strength of schedule, 551 strength of victory. And locked into the number 4 seed are the AFC South champion Houston Texans at 9-7. 4-1 versus the South, 7-4 in the AFC. 504 strength of schedule, 396 strength of victory. As of right now, your 3 wild card teams would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, Los Angeles Chargers, and Denver Broncos. Pittsburgh presently sits in the 5 seed at 10-6. 3-2 versus the North and 7-4 in the AFC. 496 strength of schedule, 444 strength of victory. They have clinched a playoff spot. The Los Angeles Chargers sit in the number 6 spot at 10-6 as well. 3-2 versus the West, 7-4 in the AFC. 480 strength of schedule, 350 strength of victory. Pittsburgh wins the tiebreaker over LA based on head-to-head win percentage. And hanging on to that number 7 spot are the Denver Broncos at 9-7. 2-3 versus the West, 5-6 in the AFC. 473 strength of schedule, 333 strength of victory. Just outside the playoffs, you have a tie with the Dolphins and Bengals. We'll start with the Miami Dolphins at 8-8. 3-2 versus the East, 6-5 in the AFC. 426 strength of schedule, 289 strength of victory. The Bengals, also 8-8, are 2-3 in the North and 5-6 in the AFC. 469 strength of schedule, 281 strength of victory. Miami wins the tiebreaker over Cincinnati based on best win percentage in conference games, 6-5 versus 5-6. Eliminated from the playoffs are the following 7 teams. The 10-seeded Indianapolis Colts at 7-9. 2-3 versus the South, 6-5 in the AFC. 473 strength of schedule, 313 strength of victory. Then you have a 3-way tie with the Jets, Raiders, and Jaguars. We'll start with the New York Jets at 4-12. 1-4 versus the East, 4-7 in the AFC. 500 strength of schedule, 297 strength of victory. Las Vegas at 4-12 is 0-5 in the West, 3-8 in the AFC, 539 strength of schedule, 359 strength of victory. And Jacksonville, also at 4-12, is 3-2 versus the North, or rather the South, I should say, and 4-7 in the AFC. 477 strength of schedule, 250 strength of victory. New York wins the tiebreaker over Las Vegas based on best win percentage in conference games, and wins the tiebreaker over Jacksonville based on a head-to-head sweep. Meanwhile, Vegas owns the tiebreaker over Jacksonville based on head-to-head win percentage. They just played last week. And at the bottom of the conference, you have the Browns, Titans, and Patriots. Cleveland sits 3-13. They are 2-3 in the North, 3-8 in the AFC. 531 strength of schedule, 521 strength of victory. Tennessee is also 3-13. 1-4 versus the South and 3-8 in the AFC. 512 strength of schedule, 417 strength of victory. And New England, also 3-13, is 1-4 versus the East, 2-9 in the AFC. 445 strength of schedule, 333 strength of victory. Cleveland wins the tiebreaker over Tennessee based on strength of victory, and also wins the tiebreaker over New England based on best win percentage in conference games. Meanwhile, Tennessee wins the tiebreaker over New England based on head-to-head winning percentage. So this puts As far as the tiebreakers go, the Steelers are the number 5 seed. The Chargers are the 6th based on Pittsburgh's head-to-head tie. The Dolphins are 8th. The Bengals are 9th. And that's based on Miami's tiebreaker in terms of win percentage in conference games. The Jets are number 11. Raiders are 12. And the Jaguars 13. New York has the win percentage over conference games tiebreaker with Vegas and the tiebreaker against the Jaguars on a head-to-head sweep. The Raiders have the tiebreaker over the Jaguars based on head-to-head winning percentage. So that puts Vegas at number 12 and Jacksonville at 13. And at the bottom of the conference, Cleveland is 14 based on their strength of victory tiebreaker over Tennessee and their conference game tiebreaker over New England. And Tennessee has the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Patriots. So that puts Cleveland at 14, Tennessee at 15, and New England at 16. Now to the NFC. Your 4 division leaders are the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alright, the Lions have only clinched a playoff berth, while both the Eagles and Rams won their respective divisions. We'll start at the top with the top-seeded Detroit Lions at 14-2. 5-0 versus the North, and 10-1 in the NFC. 500 strength of schedule, 473 strength of victory. And I'll read that tiebreaker shortly. Number 2 is the NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles at 13-3. 4-1 versus the East, 8-3 in the NFC rather. 477 strength of schedule, 452 strength of victory. The 3 seed currently resides with the NFC West champion Los Angeles Rams at 10-6. 4-1 versus the West, 6-5 in the NFC. 500 strength of schedule, 444 strength of victory. The 4 seed currently occupied by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 9-7. 3-2 versus the South, 7-4 in the AFC. 516 strength of schedule, 472 strength of victory. Your 3 wild card spots belong to the Vikings, Commanders, and Packers as of right this moment. Minnesota is the current number 5 seed at 14-2. 4-1 in the NFC, 9-2 in the AFC. 4-1 rather in the North, and 9-2 in the NFC. 445 strength of schedule, 402 strength of victory. Detroit presently wins the tiebreaker over Minnesota based on head-to-head win percentage, and these 2 teams meet on Sunday night. At number 6, locking up at least a wild card spot, or at the most a wild card spot, are the Washington Commanders at 11-5. 3-2 versus the East, 8-3 in the NFC. 434 strength of schedule, 347 strength of victory. And in the number 7 spot are the Green Bay Packers, also 11-5. 1-4 versus the North, 6-5 in the NFC. 551 strength of schedule, 409 strength of victory. Washington wins the tiebreaker over Green Bay based on best win percentage in conference games, as you see there, 8-3 versus 6-5. In the number 8 spot and officially out of the playoffs are the Seattle Seahawks at 9-7. 3-2 versus the West, 5-6 in the NFC. 496 strength of schedule, 389 strength of victory. Sitting in the 9th spot and alive, if for anything, the NFC South title are the Atlanta Falcons at 8-8. 4-1 in the South, 7-4 in the NFC. 535 strength of schedule, 422 strength of victory. Then we've got a tie with the Cowboys and the Cardinals, both eliminated from contention. Dallas is 7-9, 3-2 versus the East, 5-6 in the NFC. 508 strength of schedule, 384 strength of victory. Arizona is also 7-9, 2-3 versus the West, 3-8 in the NFC. 547 strength of schedule, 402 strength of victory. Dallas wins the tiebreaker over Arizona based on best win percentage in conference games. That puts the Cowboys at number 10 and the Cardinals at number 11. Next at number 12, you have the San Francisco 49ers at 6-10. 1-4 versus the West, 4-7 in the NFC. 574 strength of schedule, 375 strength of victory. The New Orleans Saints sit in the 13th spot at 5-11. 2-3 versus the South, 4-7 in the AFC. 504 strength of schedule, 313 strength of victory. Then there's a tie between the Bears and the Panthers. Chicago is 4-12, 0-5 in the NFC, 2-9, or rather 0-5 in the North, and 2-9 in the NFC. 547 strength of schedule, 328 strength of victory. Carolina is also 4-12. 1-4 in the South, 3-8 in the NFC. 496 strength of schedule, 297 strength of victory. Chicago wins the tiebreaker over Carolina based on head-to-head win percentage. They beat the Panthers earlier this year. That puts Chicago at 14 and Carolina at 15, with the New York Giants bringing up the rear at 3-13. 0-5 in the East, 1-10 in the NFC. 535 strength of schedule, 396 strength of victory. Alright, so that's the latest NFL playoff picture. Now let's take a look at the latest clinching and elimination scenarios from across the league going into Week 18. Now, the Vikings-Lions game is pretty straightforward. The winner takes the NFC North, takes the top seed in the conference, the first round bye, and home field advantage. The loser drops all the way to number 5. So that's pretty straightforward. Lions win the NFC North, the first round bye, and home field by beating the Vikings. And vice versa for Minnesota. They'll win the NFC West, the first round bye, and home field advantage by beating the Lions. As far as the NFC South is concerned, Atlanta clinches the division with a Falcons win against the Panthers plus a Buccaneer loss against the Saints. Tampa Bay will win the South by beating New Orleans or an Atlanta loss or tie to Carolina. So those are pretty much the only two things left to be determined in the NFC. Who gets the North and who gets home field advantage, and of course the NFC South. On the AFC side of things, Baltimore wins the AFC North by beating or tying the Cleveland Browns, or a Steelers loss or tie to the Bengals. Pittsburgh wins the AFC North with a win and a Baltimore loss. As for that number 7 playoff spot in the AFC, presently owned by the Broncos, they can clinch a playoff berth by either beating or tying the Chiefs. Kansas City again is expected to play their reserves. Or losses or ties by both Miami and Cincinnati. The Dolphins play the Jets, the Bengals play the Steelers. Miami gets in with a win plus a Broncos loss. Cincinnati somehow gets in by beating the Steelers, plus they need a Broncos loss and a Dolphins loss or tie. And there are only elimination scenarios as far as the NFC goes. So chances are whoever finishes second in the NFC South more than likely will not make the playoffs. Tampa Bay will be eliminated from contention if they lose Sunday at home to the Saints, plus the Falcons beat the Panthers. On the flip side, Atlanta's eliminated from contention if they lose to Carolina, or a Tampa Bay win or tie against New Orleans. And on the AFC side, it all comes down to who gets that number 7 seed. The Broncos will be eliminated from contention with a Denver loss plus a Cincinnati win, or a Denver loss plus a Miami win. The Dolphins are eliminated with a Dolphins loss or tie to the Jets, or a Broncos win or tie against the Chiefs. Cincinnati is eliminated from contention with a Bengals loss or tie at Pittsburgh Saturday night, or a Denver win or tie with the Chiefs, or a Miami win against the Jets. Alright. One more thing I want to get to, and that's the first overall draft pick. Alright, the Patriots will lock up the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft if they lose to Buffalo on Sunday. That's one way. Or, number 2, a Patriots tie plus wins or ties by Tennessee and Cleveland plus a Giants tie. Or, number 3, a Patriots tie plus a Tennessee win or tie plus a Cleveland tie plus a Giants win or tie. Or number 4, a Patriots tie against the Bills plus a Titans tie to the Texans, with the Texans, I should say, plus wins or ties by the Browns and Giants. The Browns play Baltimore while the Giants are playing Philly. Or, number 5, wins by all 3, the Titans, Browns, and Giants. Tennessee clinches the first overall draft pick with a loss to the Texans plus a Patriots win or tie. Or a Titans tie with the Texans plus a Patriots win plus wins or ties by the Browns and Giants. Cleveland clinches the number 1 overall pick if they lose Saturday at Baltimore, which Vegas has them as huge underdogs, plus a New England win or tie against Buffalo, plus a Tennessee win or tie against Houston. Or the Browns tie the Ravens, the Patriots and Titans both win, plus the Giants beat the Eagles or tie the Eagles. And New York clinches the number 1 overall pick. They lose to Philadelphia, plus wins or ties by the Patriots, Titans, and Browns. Or a Giants tie and wins by the Patriots, Titans, and Browns. Get it? Got it? Good. That is the Week 17 edition of the week that was, as we looked at all the team and player statistical numbers from across Week 17 in the National Football League. We also had our Week 18 power rankings. We took a look at the latest NFL playoff picture, and we just did the clinching and elimination scenarios for the playoffs and the first overall draft pick. So if you stuck with me for this long, you're a real one. Thanks a lot. Alright, we will be back tomorrow with my Week 18 NFL picks, both straight up and against the spread. And I'm probably not going to do the injury report until about Saturday afternoon. I'll probably come on at about 3 p.m. Eastern, and we'll look at the injury reports for the 2 AFC North games coming up on Saturday. So join me for that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year, and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.